Hi, what's up everyone? Let's get straight to the point. Today I'm going to talk about the reasons why the Sony FX30 is my favorite video camera. The reason why I want to make this video is because recently I've been looking into other camera system for videos and photos, and mainly I'm looking into the Panasonic Lumix S52 or S52X, and that is because of the Panasonic S9 launch. They have launched an app that you can load up LUTs from your phone onto your camera, or even create LUTs straight from your phone and load it up onto your camera to use for photos and videos. That is a really huge advantage to me because, as you know, I don't like editing photos in post. I don't mind color grading videos in post. That's something I would love to do afterwards, so I have more control of the entire image. But then for photos, I think it's a little bit more tedious and I don't really like the process. So that's why. But the thing is, after testing out the S52 or specifically the S52X in store, I really think I should keep using my FX30. And here are some of the reasons. The first being, of course, the autofocus. Yes, the Lumix S52X, even the S9 or of course, the newer GH7 that just got announced have face detect autofocus. And I know it's a lot better than before. Before the GH5 that I had didn't really have autofocus at all. So having that autofocus system on the newer Panasonic cameras is really good already. But when I was testing the cameras in store, I was testing the S52X with the kit lens, the 20mm to 60mm lens. It's good, but that is only good when there's mainly one subject that you're trying to focus on in the frame. And that is when you have, let's say, one person in frame, then the camera will have a tracking box on that person or that subject, and it will track the person pretty nicely. But once you have more than one person, it starts panicking and not sure what to do, and it starts jumping between the people. And that is really not good at all. With Sony cameras, no matter if it was like my Sony a7 III back in the days or the Sony a7 IV, especially now the FX30, the autofocus is just super good. It's pretty much flawless. I would say it's accurate 97 to 98% of the time. Besides being really sticky, another really cool advantage of using Sony cameras autofocus system is it doesn't panic. That's really, really important. When you are filming a video, I'm not talking about photos. Photos, most of the cameras are okay. Like face detect autofocus or like contrast detect, it's still fine. You can still focus, single point autofocus, and then take the photo. But for video, because it's a playback of a lot of images, you don't want a camera to panic and start drifting between subjects or even between the subject and the background. So with that multiple subject being in frame and the camera starting to panic, that really gives me not a lot of confidence when I am using a Panasonic camera, even with the latest face detect autofocus system. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there are things that you can do to the settings, but from what I've seen in a lot of reviews on YouTube, they have been saying pretty much the same thing. When you have multiple subjects, you will have a moment where the camera is panicking and then start drifting. With Sony cameras, even when there are multiple subjects, it will usually stick with the first subject that you focus the camera on, and even if it's drifting between subjects, it's a really smooth kind of transition, but not jumps. Besides that, the autofocus allows me, yes, as a one-man band, to do all my projects, filming dancers, jumping in and out of the frame, moving super fast. The focus pulling is really smooth and calm. That makes it really easy to film by yourself. And the tracking autofocus by tapping onto the screen or the wireless app really allows me to, even if I want to focus on just a specific subject, a lot easier than using other brands. The second reason why I decided to keep using my FX30 instead of getting the S52X from Panasonic is because of the lenses. I was thinking, okay, if I switch to the Panasonic system, I will have to invest into the L-mount system, which is not bad. You have a lot of Sigma lenses. And the Panasonic kit lens is really good. The 20mm to 60mm, it's really good. I was thinking to get the 20 to 60mm and a 50 to 1.8 or the Sigma 45 f2.8 lens as a combination of a kit that I can use. But after that, I was like, I can use this one lens to cover pretty much everything. Yes, this is a 2.8 lens on an APS-C FX30. This is a Sigma 18 to 50 f2.8 lens. But I am really happy with the performance already. It's enough subject separation from the background. F2.8 on APS-C is still really good for videos. As I said before, I don't want to blur out the background completely. What's the point of blurring out the background if you are setting up all the lighting on set and like go to a location and end up like blurring out the background? So that's why the F2.8 on the FX30, it's good enough for me. A lot of my projects, I have more than enough subject isolations, especially if I zoom it into like the 50mm range. I usually use it from 28 to 50 because yes, this lens is good, but then there is a lot of barrel distortion at not F, but at 18mm, you will see that at the top and the bottom, there's a lot of distortion. So I usually film from 28 to 50, which is around like 40mm to 75mm at f2.8 wide open, and that's more than enough. Talking about lenses, also lenses on APS-C Sony cameras are usually a lot smaller. I don't know if you can see how small this is. This is super tiny. I think it's smaller than a can of those like mini like pop cans that you see. Even when it's extended, it's not that big at all. I don't know if you can see the size, but it's super tiny and lightweight. Compared to L-mount lenses, there is a lot of good lenses, but they are big. Because it's a full frame system, I know if you want to get the full frame look for photos, it's really good. But then the lenses are way too big and way heavier than the APS-C lenses that I can get for my Sony FX30. I was looking into the Filtrox 27mm f1.2 for the FX30 as well. Maybe I can get that lens in and try to test out on the FX30 as well. Yes, talking about Filtrox, the Sony lenses, the third-party lenses are way more options than the L-mount at the moment. Yes, I know L-mount is growing, but the options, the third-party options for Sony cameras are way more. And of course, you can adapt the full-frame lenses onto the APS-C camera. I wouldn't do that because it's expensive and heavy. So I have full-frame lenses for Sony, but I still won't attach it to the FX30. This is the only lens I have been using on the FX30 since day one. I haven't detached the lens since day one. Since there are a lot of third-party options, that makes these lenses a lot cheaper than full-frame lenses compared to L-mount. Yes, Sigma L-mount lenses are not that expensive considering the quality and everything. But then you have way more options right now at the moment. I don't know about the future, but I'm sure L-mount is going to get more popular and there will be more options in the future. But at the moment, the lenses on APS-C Sony cameras are just unbeatable because of the weight, size, and price. Talking about sizes, the FX30 is a chunky camera because it's an FX30 body. It's a full-frame FX30 body, but it's good compared to the S5 II or S5 IIX because it does not have an EVF. It's a flat top camera. I don't know about you guys, but for video work, especially for projects and everything, I love having cameras without EVF. The main reason is I don't use the EVF for videos. I don't take videos with my eyes on the EVF most of the time. I know some people do, yes, but I don't. And I always use a gimbal. I always set this camera up for gimbal use. So having no EVF and a flat top makes it a lot easier to clear the gimbal movement when you are having the gimbal. I'll show you guys the gimbal arm at the top. Like if you have an EVF on your camera, especially the S5 IIX or S5 II, the EVF is not small. So most likely when I use it with certain gimbals, it will like touch the gimbal arm when I'm using it. So that's why not having EVF makes it much more attractive as a video camera. When it comes to battery life of Sony cameras, including the Sony FX30, it's amazing. The big Sony battery lasts at least 2 hours long of video taking. If you turn off your camera on set, like on and off, you will get even longer. But for a lot of other cameras, no matter how big the battery is, usually they will last like under an hour. Not an hour, but usually they'll last about like under 2 hours long, especially on the S5 II and S5 II X. I've seen a lot of reviews saying that the battery life is not that great. I hate that. I really don't like that. I don't like carrying extra batteries, and that's why it is kind of a deal breaker to me. And the Sony cameras, the battery lasts almost like forever, seems like. But the only complaint I have with the Sony batteries is it takes forever to charge. It will take more than 2 hours to charge a battery. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if they can improve that charging speed, but then the battery life wise, this camera, it's much better than the S5 II X, at least from what I've seen. Okay, let's talk about the image quality comparing the Sony FX30 to the cameras that I've been looking at recently. The image quality on the FX30 is amazing. I have no complaint whatsoever. Yes, dynamic range is not going to be as good as the full frame cameras, definitely not as good as the FX3. But then if you know how to control your lighting and make it not as challenging for the camera, it looks amazing. For my use case, I usually film indoor with control lights, and I don't have any problems at all unless it is a shot, like a bright light shining into the camera directly. That will make the exposure a little bit funky because I use a lot of color lights for a lot of dance videos, and sometimes it gets really weirdly saturated because certain channel of the colors are like overexposed compared to the rest of the scene. But I have no complaint at all when I'm filming outdoor. Usually I will try not to have super harsh light and like highlights and super dark shadows in one scene, so that will make it work better. This is not an ARRI Alexa, so it will not have super nice dynamic range if you've used the camera in a really harsh environment. So that, I think it's really depending on how I use the camera. So image quality, 10-bit 422 on the FX30, super nice to color grade. I only have one thing that I need to do every time, that is to fix the yellow and the greens in the image, because Sony's yellows are usually a little bit greenish, and then the green is a little bit towards a yellowish side. So if you have like trees and leaves and stuff like that, it will turn into like a really weird yellow. And if you have skin tone that it's a little bit towards the warmer yellow side, it will turn a little bit towards the green. So I have to use the hue saturation curve to like spread them out and then make them yellow again and green again. So that's the only thing with the image coming out of pretty much like any recent Sony cameras. But I have no problem at all because I've already created a LUT or a power grade that I can use to put onto these Sony FX30 to make the image look like just like other cameras. So I have no complaints. So that's pretty much all I can say about the image quality coming out of the FX30. I know that other cameras have 10-bit 422 color code as well, but then I have no complaint with the Sony images. I was reading online that some people actually said that the Lumix, the Panasonic S5 II and S5 II X images are really sharp. Like, it looks almost over sharpened, and you can't really turn down the sharpness in camera even when you are using vlog. I don't know about the recent release of the GH7. I have to take a look at the image quality first, but I do think they're a little bit too sharp when I was testing it in store. So if that's the case, then that's definitely a deal breaker because I hate having like super sharp images, especially for videos. So Sony FX30, super sturdy codec for video editing and color grading, so no complaint at all. Oh, by the way, if you are wondering, since I was a BMPCC 4K and 6K user, the Sony image coming out of the A7 IV and the FX30, they're not as good as the BMPCC 4K or 6K. Highlight roll off are not as good. and the dynamic range is not as good. It's not as film-like compared to the BMPCC 4K and 6K. So yes, those are 12-bit raw images, so you can't really compare them. And those cameras are really difficult to use, especially if you're only by yourself. You have to pull your like focus while like filming. It's just not as easy. So if you are a solo filmmaker, definitely get a Sony camera. Okay, let's talk about some of the smaller advantages using the Sony FX30 or any recent Sony cameras. The first one being the great wireless controlling app that is available, the Monitor Plus app and the Sony Imaging app. I can't remember the name, but I'm still using the Monitor Plus app. I paid for that app. They are really amazing. Yes, it uses Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection, so it's not super smooth sometimes, but then it's really good because compared to other brands' apps, I have no complaint at all. You have all the controls over the camera and you have all the monitoring features like false colors, like waveform monitor, everything that you can ask for compared to an actual monitor that you have to connect and use a separate battery to use with the camera. The wireless controlling apps are amazing on Sony cameras. You can press record and stop recording. The only thing you cannot do with those wireless apps, which I really, really wish they can, is to play back the images coming out of the camera. You can kind of have the playback feature working by saving the videos in your mobile devices, but that's super cumbersome. And I wish if I press the playback button, it will show the images on the wireless app as well. But other than that, that is really cool because I hate cables coming out of cameras. I hate having to stick a HDMI cable out of the camera because it's not easy to have like cables dangling all over the camera, and especially if I use a lot of gimbal. Like if you're using gimbal, it's really annoying. The cable will yank the camera and start like moving the camera with and limiting the camera from moving smoothly on the gimbal. So that's why wireless controlling app on the Sony cameras is one of the main reasons why I'm sticking with my Sony FX30. Talking about using gimbal, yes, the Sony FX30 is super easy to use with gimbals. And I'm not talking about like super big gimbal like the DJI RS series. I have the RS2. I'm not buying the RS3 and RS4 because they're just bigger to me. At least they're just bigger gimbals. I hate big gear. So the Crane M3, not even the M3S from Zhiyun, is good enough for this setup right here. The FX30 with the small ray cage and the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 lens can fit on here and balance well and work smoothly on the Zhiyun Crane M3. I can fit this entire setup in one backpack and it's completely fine and I love it. I started bringing smaller setup on set just because it's easier to carry around and it's easier on my back. I don't have to worry about like carrying like multiple bags just to carry a gimbal. I know it doesn't look as cool because the setup is smaller and the gimbal look like a toy, but then I don't care. At least to me, the image quality or the images that I've created using these setup or this entire setup can tell the story to my clients or my friends that this is good enough. Even when I'm using the RS2, I'm using the same setup, the same camera, same lens, so the image is gonna look exactly the same. The only thing I can think of comparing the RS2 to the Crane M3 is the RS2 might be a little bit more stable compared to the Crane M3 mostly because of the motor torque, like the powerful motor, and maybe because the whole setup is heavier. That's why you might have a more stable image coming out of that combination. But to me, I rarely see any weird like jumps or anything with the Crane M3 using it with the FX30 and this lens. So I don't need a super big setup. That's just me and it's working really well. The last advantage that I can think of using the FX30 in the past almost 2 years now, I think, is it never really failed because it's a really durable camera that Sony built. It's a Sony FX3 body with like active cooling. I never really overheated my camera. I'm in Vancouver. It's almost impossible to overheat a camera. But for people who need a camera that is reliable in hotter like climate, yes, the active cooling is definitely a must, and it makes you feel much more relaxed on set that your camera is not going to overheat and then you cannot like continue filming. And the second thing is the dual card slot. No, I'm not talking about like redundancy of recording video simultaneously onto two cards. I'm talking about if one card is full, I still have another card in the camera that I can continue filming. I don't like carrying stuff, as you can probably tell already. The second card slot is for me to just store the second card. I record everything onto slot one, and then when slot one is full, it will switch to slot two. That's really convenient. I don't have to carry like an extra SD card. I have like almost, I don't know, like 256 gigabyte of storage with both cards, and that's way more than enough for everything. It's longer than the battery for sure. So dual card slot and the active cooling, and it makes it never fail. So that's why I am really happy with the Sony FX30. That's it. Those are my reasons why the Sony FX30 is still my favorite camera for video projects, and I don't think I will switch out until they fix the stuff that I mentioned in this video, like battery life and autofocus, no panicking and everything, the wireless app and stuff. If not, then I'll just stick with this camera. This is way more than enough for more than like 90% of projects that I film. And I'm really happy with the performance and also the size and everything. I can fit this in a fanny pack if I want to. So yeah, that's it. Let us know what's your favorite video camera in the comment section below. And I would love to know what your favorite camera is and learn from your setup. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.